Every mechanic on this planet has done it. The alternator dies, the battery light comes on, and somebody quotes you $450 to $700 for a replacement. You pay it, because what else are you going to do? You need your car. But here is what nobody in the parts store or the dealership service bay wants you to know. 9 times out of 10, your alternator did not actually die. One tiny component inside it wore out. A component that a Japanese company specifically designed to be replaceable by anyone with a screwdriver, and 5 minutes. The part costs $12. I am not exaggerating. And the fix is so simple that I have done it in a parking lot with a basic socket set and a cup of gas station coffee. After 22 years of turning wrenches, this is the single most money-saving repair I teach people. And it comes from a design philosophy that most American car owners have never even heard of. Today I am going to show you exactly what fails inside your alternator, why the Japanese engineered it to be fixed instead of thrown away, and how you can do this repair yourself in about 5 minutes once the alternator is in your hands. Stick around for the end, because I am going to show you the one diagnostic test that tells you whether this fix will work for your car before you spend a dime. Let's get into it. The $12 fix nobody talks about. First, you need to understand what actually goes wrong when an alternator dies. Most of the time, the word dead is doing a lot of heavy lifting for what is actually a very minor failure. Your alternator has 5 main components inside it. A rotor, which spins, a stator, which stays still, a rectifier bridge, which converts alternating current to direct current, a voltage regulator which controls output, and 2 small carbon brushes that ride against copper slip rings on the rotor shaft. Those brushes deliver the electrical current to the rotor's field winding, and that field winding creates the magnetic field that makes the whole unit generate electricity. Here is the thing about those brushes. They are made of carbon graphite. They are designed to wear down. That is literally their job. They press against the spinning copper slip rings under spring tension, and over tens of thousands of miles, they slowly grind themselves shorter and shorter until they can no longer make solid contact. When that happens, the magnetic field gets weak or disappears entirely. Your alternator stops charging. The battery light comes on, and you think the whole unit is toast, but it is not. The rotor is fine. The stator is fine. The rectifier is fine. The voltage regulator is usually fine. 2 little carbon sticks wore down to nothing after doing their job faithfully for 150,000 to 250,000 miles. That is it. That is your $500 problem. Now here is where the Japanese method comes in. I call it the Japanese method because one company engineers this fix right into the design of the alternator itself. That company is Denso. If you drive a Toyota, Honda, Lexus, Acura, Mazda, Scion, or even many Chryslers, Dodges, and Fords from the last 20 years, there is a very high chance your alternator was built by Denso. Denso is a Japanese company that was originally part of Toyota. In 1949, they spun off from Toyota Motor Corporation as Nippon Denso, which translates to Japanese electrical equipment. Today, they are the second largest automotive parts supplier on the planet, with nearly $50 billion in annual revenue and over 160,000 employees across 35 countries. But here is what makes Denso different from almost every other alternator manufacturer in the world. They designed their alternators with a modular brush holder assembly. The brushes, the springs, and the holder are all one self-contained cartridge that sits on the back of the alternator. It is held in place by 2 or 3 small screws. You pop off a cover, remove those screws, slide out the old brush holder, slide in the new one, and you are done. That is it. 5 minutes, maybe less. This was not an accident. This was not a cost-cutting measure. This was deliberate Japanese engineering philosophy. Denso's corporate motto translates loosely to, "Manufacturing is about developing people." They build things to be understood. built to be serviced and to last. While other manufacturers were designing alternators that required complete disassembly or outright replacement when the brushes wore out, Denso made the most failure-prone component in the entire unit as easy to swap as changing batteries in a flashlight. I had a customer 2 years ago, a retired teacher driving a 2009 Toyota Camry with 214,000 miles. The battery light came on during her morning commute. She pulled into my shop, and I tested the charging system. The alternator was putting out 11.8 volts. Dead. A new Denso Raman alternator was going to run about $225 for the part plus labor. I told her to give me 30 minutes. I pulled the alternator out, popped off the rear cover with a flathead screwdriver, removed 2 Phillips head screws, and slid out the brush holder. The brushes were worn down to about 3 millimeters. Brand new brushes are around 15 millimeters long. These things were practically gone. I walked inside and grabbed a brush holder assembly I keep in stock, $14 from Amazon. I slid it in, put the screws back, and reinstalled the alternator. I tested the output, 14.2 volts, perfect charging voltage. Her total cost was $14 for the part, and my labor, which I honestly felt guilty charging for because the actual repair took me about 4 minutes. She drove out of here, and I got a text from her 6 months later. Still charging perfectly at 228,000 miles. That is the Japanese method. Do not replace what is not broken. Fix the one thing that is. How to know if this fix will work for you. Now, before you run out and order a brush holder kit, let me save you some frustration. This fix works in a very specific scenario, and I am going to give you the diagnostic process so you know before you start. Step 1. The hammer test. I know this sounds ridiculous, but it works, and there is actual science behind it. If your alternator is showing low or no charging voltage, take a rubber mallet, or even the handle of a heavy screwdriver, and give the body of the alternator a few solid taps while the engine is running. If the voltage jumps back up to 13.5 to 14.5 volts after you hit it, even temporarily, your brushes are the problem. What happens is the impact jars the worn brushes just enough to re-establish contact with the slip rings for a moment. If tapping brings it back to life, even for 30 seconds, you just confirm the diagnosis. I have seen this work hundreds of times. A customer comes in, the battery light is on, and the alternator is showing 12 volts or less. I give it 2 good whacks with a mallet, and the voltage jumps to 14 volts. That alternator does not need to be replaced. It needs a $12 brush holder. Step 2. Check the age and mileage. Brush wear is a high mileage failure. If your vehicle has under 100,000 miles and the alternator is not charging, the brushes probably are not the issue. Look at the voltage regulator, the rectifier, or a wiring problem first. But if you are north of 150,000 miles on the original alternator and it just stopped charging, brushes. Almost guaranteed. Step 3. Listen for bearing noise. Before you start the repair, let the engine run and listen to the alternator with a mechanic's stethoscope or even a long screwdriver pressed against the housing with your ear on the handle. If you hear grinding, whining, or roughness, the bearings are going too. Bearings can be replaced as well, but that is a more involved repair. If the bearings sound smooth and the hammer test brought the voltage back, you are golden. Brush holder swap, and you are back on the road. Step 4. Check the slip rings after you pull the alternator. Once you have the brush holder out, look at the 2 copper rings on the rotor shaft. If they are smooth with light wear, you are fine. If they have deep grooves, like a canyon cut into the copper, the brushes will wear out again quickly because there is not enough copper left for a good contact surface. In that case, you may want to go with a remanufactured unit. But in my experience, if the alternator is under 250,000 miles, the slip rings are usually in good shape. The step-by-step repair. All right, here is the actual repair, And I am telling you, once you see how simple this is, you are going to wonder why anyone ever pays $500 for a new alternator on a high-mileage car. Tools you need: a basic socket set, 10mm and 12mm sockets for most Japanese vehicles, a Phillips head screwdriver, or a JIS screwdriver if you want to do it properly, since Japanese crosshead screws are slightly different from Phillips, and a flathead screwdriver to pop the back cover. Step 1. Disconnect the battery. Always. The positive cable on the alternator is always live, and you do not want to create a spark near anything important. Step 2. Remove the alternator from the vehicle. On most Toyota and Honda 4-cylinder engines, this is 2 or 3 bolts and an electrical connector. Loosen the belt tensioner, slip the belt off, undo the mounting bolts, disconnect the wiring harness and the main power cable, and maneuver the alternator out. On some vehicles, you can even access the brush holder without removing the alternator at all. On the old Toyota 5S FE engines, for example, you can reach the back of the alternator with the unit still bolted to the engine. Step 3. Once the alternator is on your workbench, look at the back. You will see a small cover, usually stamped with the ND logo, which stands for Nippon Denso. Pry that cover off gently with a flathead screwdriver. Underneath, you will see the brush holder assembly. It is a small rectangular piece with 2 screws, or sometimes 3, holding it in place. Remove those screws and the brush holder slides straight out. You will probably see a bunch of black carbon dust in there. That is normal. That is the wear material from the brushes, doing their job for the last 200,000 miles. Step 4. Slide in the new brush holder. There is a small hole in the back of most Denso brush holders where you can insert a paper clip or a small Allen key to hold the brushes in their retracted position while you install the cartridge. This makes lining them up with the slip rings much easier. Once the holder is seated, tighten the screws, pull out the paper clip to release the brushes, put the cover back on, and you are done. Step 5. Before you reinstall the alternator, take it to any auto parts store. AutoZone, O'Reilly, or Advance will bench test it for free. Confirm you are getting 14 to 14.5 volts output before you go through the trouble of putting it back in the car. Step 6. Reinstall. Reconnect. Start the engine. Check voltage at the battery terminals. If you see 13.8 to 14.5 volts, congratulations. You just saved yourself somewhere between $300 and $600. Why? Mechanics do not tell you about this. I will be honest with you. Most shops are not going to recommend this repair, and I understand why. The labor to remove the alternator is the same whether you are swapping a brush holder or installing a whole new unit. So from a shop's perspective, it makes more sense to charge $225 for a remanufactured alternator plus 2 hours of labor than to charge $14 for a brush kit plus the same 2 hours of labor. The margin on the part matters to a business. I get it. But here is the thing. If you are doing this yourself, or if you have an honest mechanic who charges by the hour and does not mark up parts 300%, this repair changes the equation entirely. You are looking at a $14 part versus a $150 to $300 part. And the alternator you already have, the one Denso built with those beautiful Japanese tolerances, is likely better than the remanufactured unit you would be buying to replace it. I cannot tell you how many remanufactured alternators I have seen fail within 2 years. The rebuilders often use cheaper bearings, inferior brush materials, and sometimes just slap a coat of paint on a housing that has been through 3 owners. Your original Denso alternator with fresh brushes is going to outlast a bargain Riemann unit 9 times out of 10. And here is one more number that will make you angry. One guy on a Toyota forum reported that his original Denso brushes lasted 285,000 miles. He replaced them for $10 with an eBay brush holder kit. Same alternator, still going strong. Another owner reported his original Denso alternator lasting over 325,000 miles before needing a brush change. 325,000 miles on the original unit. That is not a part that needs to be thrown away. That is a part that deserves a $12 service. What about non-Japanese vehicles? Quick note for anyone watching who does not drive a Japanese brand. This same fix applies to a lot of non-Japanese vehicles too, because Denso supplies alternators across the board. Many Chrysler, Dodge, Jeep, Ford, and even some GM models from the 2000s onward use Denso-built alternators. Check the back of your alternator. If you see the ND stamp or the Denso name, you are in business. The same modular brush holder design, the same 2-screw replacement, the same 5-minute fix. Bosch alternators, which are common on European vehicles, also have replaceable brushes, though the design is slightly different. The brush holder on a Bosch unit often includes the voltage regulator as an integrated assembly, so the replacement part is a bit more expensive, usually around $30 to $50, but still a fraction of a full alternator swap. The vehicles where this gets harder are some domestic designs from the early 2000s and older, where the brushes are soldered directly to the internal wiring and are not designed as a removable cartridge. In those cases, you either need soldering skills or you are better off with a replacement unit. One last thing before I let you go, and this is for emergencies only. If your alternator dies on the road and you need to limp somewhere to get the repair done, here is the trailside trick that mechanics and off-roaders have used for decades. Grab a can of electrical contact cleaner from any auto parts store or even a hardware store. Spray it into the vent holes on the back of the alternator while the engine is off. Then start the engine and give the alternator housing a few solid taps with whatever blunt object you have. A hammer, a wrench, or a rock. What you are doing is flushing carbon dust and debris away from the brushes, while physically jarring them back into contact with the slip rings. On stuck or gunked up brushes, this can bring your alternator back to life long enough to get home or to a shop. This is not a permanent fix. It is a Band-Aid, but I have seen it save people from tow truck bills more times than I can count. One guy on a Jeep forum did this on the trail after a mud run, coated his alternator. He sprayed contact cleaner into it, gave it a few solid whacks, and watched his voltage climb from nothing back to 13.5 volts. He drove home and ordered a brush holder that night. So there it is, the Japanese method, a design philosophy from a company that was born inside Toyota in 1949 and grew into the second largest auto parts supplier on the planet. They built your alternator to last 200,000 to 300,000 miles. And when the one wear component finally gives out, they designed it to be replaced in 5 minutes for $12. That is not just smart engineering. That is respect for the person who buys the product. And it is a philosophy that will save you hundreds of dollars if you know about it. So here is your action plan. Go look at the back of your alternator. If it says Denso or ND, order a brush holder assembly right now as a preventive measure. Keep it in your glove box. When the day comes, and on a high-mileage vehicle it eventually will, you will have the part ready and the knowledge to fix it yourself in less time than it takes to drive to a shop. If this kind of straight talk helps you, please subscribe. I have more videos coming on the repairs that shops overcharge for, and the ones you can do yourself for pennies. Like if it saved you money. I will see you in the next one. Take care of your car, and it will take care of you.